Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to our online discussion of October 16, 2015. My name is Christian Debré, and this is Amy Albert, Director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet. Yes.
Excuse me.
No, but that is what it is. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet. La résistance, the resistance.
Yeah.
Okay, so Toujours Vivant Not Dead Yet is a project of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities. Sorry, our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminate against people with disabilities. There's our reason to oppose the legalization of assisted suicide and euthanasia. Here are just a few. There is 4, okay? It's unnecessary. Everyone has the option to commit suicide or to refuse medical care and have palliative sedation on demand.
And if people want to really have control over their lives, they can kill themselves. That is an autonomous act.
And we have a proof of that. 100% proof. Secondly, it's discriminatory. While people without disability receive suicide prevention services, if they express a wish to die, people with disabilities will be encouraged to and assisted to kill themselves.
Yeah, that's a double standard that is discriminatory.
Which is not wished in Canada.
Right.
Okay, third, choice is an illusion. The choice to die cannot be free as long as people with disabilities don't have the choice in where and how to live.
Right, and the people who support assisted suicide often say, oh, you don't trust us to make a choice, and that's not what we're saying at all. We're saying that the choice doesn't even exist if you don't have the choice of where and how to live.
Yes, and the fourth one is safeguard don't work. Where these practices are legal, safeguards do not prevent people from disabilities from being wrongly killed.
Right, exactly. Go ahead. I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
The goal of our online discussion are to give disability people a place to talk about these issues among ourselves from our point of view. Okay, and we are the specialists of the using of the network of
the health system.
Health system, yes. Yeah. Secondly, to recognize our experience and expertise in dealing with discriminatory and medical system.
Yep.
Third, to take our place in the public debate aside from conservative and progressive.
Right, and even though the media tries to pretend that we don't exist or that we are just puppets of the right, of the conservatives, in fact, we have a very progressive view of this, and we need to take our place in the debate. We
are more progressive than so-called progressive.
Right, exactly, because they only scratch the surface, but we go deeper into the issue.
Okay, today's topics. The Quebec College of Physicians Guide to Medical Aid in Dying, and commentary of election 2015. So we let Amy talk to you about both of the subjects.
Great. Okay. Quebec's law allowing euthanasia will come into effect in less than 2 months.
It's very short.
It's coming in right up. But up to now, we've only found one set of regulations published in the Official Gazette of Quebec, which relates to medical aid in dying.
Is it enough?
No.
We don't think so.
This regulation describes only a small part of the changes that will be necessary to implement what is supposed to be a carefully regulated euthanasia program. And with only a part of the regulations described, it's not going to be a carefully regulated program, and there's going to be a lot of problems. On our webcast of September 11th, we mentioned the Quebec College of Physicians Guide, and we finally got a hold of a copy and would like to let you know about some of the important items we found in it.
So it's a nice exercise. They produce a document, kind of rightly righted, but there is a lot of question to ask on it.
Right. First, here are some general observations that we made. There is a very strong bias toward death in this document. Euthanasia is described as a way to relieve pain, which is kind of strange.
Which is not the only way,
right.
And it's not really a way. Really, you to kill the pain, you kill the people.
Right, and that's not killing pain.
Not really. You
no.
kill the people.
Right. There is nothing apart from ethical behavior to prevent a doctor from falsifying the request form of someone with a communication disability, obtaining a rubber stamp approval from a second doctor, obtaining the lethal dosage from a pharmacist, performing the euthanasia, and producing a report of an apparently legitimate process. So there's nothing that prevents that other than his own good faith.
Yeah. So the doctors are like every different part of the society. There is good doctor, but there is few bad doctor and even few criminals in it.
Right, and if the doctors believe that killing people is a way of relieving pain, we're not so much afraid of doctors behaving badly. We're afraid of how doctors want to help us. Yes. And that's, if they think killing us is helping us, that's pretty scary.
We will help you. We will kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
Not good.
Right. In the guide, there is no provision for the forms, the application forms, or the process to be accessible to people with sensory or communication difficulties, such as access to neutral scribes to write down what the person says, and interpreters, documents in accessible formats, etc. And that's one of the first things that the Canadian Association of the Deaf asked for when we talked about this at the meeting of the Council of the Canadians with Disabilities this summer. Is it going to be accessible? And that's also what COFAN talked about during the hearings. Is it going to be accessible? Well, it sounds like nobody's thinking about that. And how can people have effective communication if there's no interpreters, or the only person who's writing down things or interpreting is a member of the family?
Yeah, maybe they need a little bit faster income from the old uncle.
Right, exactly, right. So there is also no provision to prevent a third party who fills out a form on someone's behalf from being a member of the family or exerting undue influence or having an interest in the property of the person making the request.
Undue influence?
Right. Exactly.
It happened quite a lot of time. There is a lot of violence against people with disability. It's one of the undue influence who could happen.
Right, and it doesn't always have to be violence either. The person could just feel pressured. People in the family could be saying, "Oh, you're spending all our money. We have no money
alone
left.
On my family. I'm alone over my family.
Yeah, I'm a burden on my family."
Burden. Sorry, not a load of burden.
Yeah.
My English is far too
It's okay. So yeah, people could feel pressured, not physically, but emotionally. So that's another way of undue influence. With all physicians, one of our things that we wanted to remark on was a question, which is, will all physicians be allowed to perform euthanasia, such as podiatrists, foot doctors, dermatologists, meaning skin doctors, plastic surgeons, or will it just be general practitioners? That was a question we thought was important.
There will be specialists. I don't know. We don't know.
Right.
But those three ones I feel like very odd.
Right. It seems like it would be kind of odd for a foot doctor to be making these kind of decisions.
Kind of. And they could be the second doctor, or they could be the first doctor, and in some time, the only doctor.
Right. Also, the guide states that on average, a doctor would perform euthanasia less than once a year. But with 22,500 doctors in Quebec, How many people do they really, how many deaths are they expecting? How many general practitioners are there? How many people will be prescribing death? Is that going to be 22,000 deaths a year? Who knows?
I wish not that Quebec will
Right.
go very fast
Right.
down in population.
Right, exactly. The guide indicates the doctor who makes the decision about the euthanasia request will be the quote-unquote treating physician, but who will decide for the 25% of Quebecers who don't have a family doctor? And that's an important question.
That's a good point, and very difficult to solve.
Because the idea of having
With
a
the
treating
people.
physician is somebody that you know and who knows you and who knows your situation over the long term, who knows your family. If you don't have a doctor like that, and even if somebody is assigned just when you become sick, that doctor's not going to know you very well.
Not really. And like you said, even if it's an assigned doctor, maybe he doesn't have seen you since 2 or 3 years.
Right, exactly. That's another possibility. Also, the guide indicates that the doctor who makes the decision about, oh, I'm sorry, I just read that. Excuse me. Several of the kinds of suffering named in the guide could apply to people in abusive relationships or people who are depressed. For example, total dependence and the feeling of desperation in the face of hopeless situation both characterize battered women's syndrome. As well, chemical imbalances from depression can create the false idea that there is no escape from one's problems.
And I know that, I think you know very well what's happening.
I've definitely gone through that. And, you know, I know myself well enough to understand that that's a chemical imbalance that's telling me those things and that they're not true. But most people with depression don't know that. You know, if you've just been, this is the first time you've really been depressed, or, you know, it takes a lot of times going through it to know that it's an imbalance. So, you know, a lot of people don't understand that the things they're feeling aren't real. And so they make decisions based on those feelings, and those decisions about wanting to die, they're not real. So the question is, are we going to kill people because they have a chemical imbalance in their brain? And will the social interventions be sufficient to prevent people who are in abusive relationships from
social
dying?
intervention could be very, very important.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's skipped
Yeah.
and feel not important.
The guide states that the person is the best judge of his or her tolerance for suffering and of the means to relieve that suffering. And generally we, you know, think that's true.
That's true for both, sorry.
Right. But the question is, what should be done when the person is ignorant, when there's a lack of resources and the prejudice interfere with that person's judgment? What will the person do if the doctor has only offered medical and not social alternatives? So the doctor says, well, you can get this medical treatment or that medical treatment, but doesn't say anything about being able to live independently in the community, or, you know, having, setting up, you know, if the person used to like to garden and can't do it anymore, if the doctor doesn't say, well, we can set up a gardening bed that you can still plant flowers and raise your tomatoes. The doctor doesn't do that, the person isn't going to get the alternatives that she wants.
Yeah.
Also, what will the person do if the appropriate palliative care is not available in her area?
Which happen quite a lot of time.
Right. Or if a therapist has shown prejudice toward her as a person who is ill or disabled. And that happens a lot to disabled people, because therapists have the same prejudices about disability as everybody else, and they often think that life with a disability is tragic and that, you know, people don't have a good quality of life. So if you're forced with, will you be quiet?
You're a cat problem.
We have a cat problem. Yes, we do. So if the person is being told by their therapist that all their problems are because of the person's disability, that's going to create a bad situation. And finally, given all those things, given the person's ignorance and bad feedback.
We really have to inform you that this is really a home-based webcast.
Oh, did you just get up there? Yeah, okay.
I could show you the problem.
Yeah. Here comes the problem.
Here comes the problem.
Let her go.
Sorry.
Well, now she'll leave us alone.
Sorry.
Okay. The same principle applies to the vision for mental and spiritual health care at the end of life. The guide says that the person should receive a specific multidimensional therapeutic approach, meaning listening, spiritual and religious support, psychotherapy, psychopharmacology, social interventions, etc. But we want to know, is this likely to happen when palliative care is only available to 16 to 30% of the population? We don't think so.
And the social thing is always underestimate.
Underfunded.
Underestimate, underfunded,
Yep.
under everything.
Mental health care is generally given a lot less funding than physical health care in general. And who is to say that mental health care for people at the end of life is going to be given any more resources? And if it is, then that's going to take resources from other mental health care.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, the guide continues in the tradition of not defining end of life. It describes the signs of 3 phases of the end of life.
There are 4, but the first
Right.
one is not
Not relevant.
relevant.
Right.
Okay, is the sudden death. Okay,
Right.
car accident or whatever,
Right.
plane crash.
First of all, the terminal diagnosis stage can extend from a week to 8 years. So
Kind of long.
yeah, a big range.
Very
there.
wide, very long.
Right. So for people with cancer, their terminal phase might be around 8 months. For people with pulmonary or circulatory disease, that might be from 2 to 5 years, this end of life period. And finally, for elderly people and those who have fragile health, it could be from 6 to 8 years.
So SLA or other kind
Multiple
of
sclerosis.
other sclerosis,
Yeah,
are they included in the weak people?
right. It doesn't say if people with those disabilities are included in the people with fragile
But
health.
the prognostic of those sickness are death too.
Right,
But it's very long.
right. It can take, I mean, my friend Denise, who actually performed our wedding ceremony, has had multiple sclerosis since 1981. So she's at it for 34 years.
But the prognostic is still death.
Right.
But we doesn't know when.
Right, exactly. They also talk about the signs of a very advanced and progressive illness advancing rapidly toward death, which is less than 4 days. And finally, the signs of imminent death, alteration of vital signs, which means the person is going to die in less than 24 hours. And
Home base.
on. Oh my God. Great. Yeah, okay. I declined. One of the signs given for a terminal prognosis in this setup is delirium, but we know that should automatically disqualify a person for euthanasia.
So if the man start when the dementia is already started, it should be completely
Right, and
forbidden.
that's delirium,
It should,
actually.
delirium, sorry.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
should, but
We don't know if
we
it
don't
will.
know it with, yeah, that's the
Right,
problem.
because they're including it in the symptoms that are qualifying the person for end of life, so we don't know.
So we could be mistaken by a doctor.
Right,
Maybe the way it's written, it's not, but a doctor could say it is.
right, right. So that's what we've got on it for today. We're going to come back to this. We'll resume our discussion of the physician's guide next week because there's more to it, and we actually haven't finished going through it because we haven't had it for that long. And it's a very technical, very long document with a lot of material that we want to present more to you later on.
Most of our remarks are in form of question. We have questions, which is normal. We should question those documents.
Right. And as consumers of services, people with disabilities need to ask those same questions because these are very important issues for all of us. And we need to know what this program is going to look like when it hits the ground in 2 months.
So it is very short to make sure that every doctor, like it is written, will be conscious and efficient and very operational with all this.
Right, because this concentrates a lot of power in the hands of one person. That one person gets to decide a lot of things, and if that person does anything wrong or makes a mistake, because everybody makes mistakes, people could suffer for it. And so this is one of the reasons that we have a lot of questions.
Did you really know at least one people who have read every law and understand it at the same time?
Right. So it's important for people to talk to their own doctors to know what their own doctors are thinking about this and whether their own doctors are going to perform assisted suicide or not. Because they do have a choice on that, at least. Okay, let's get on to our commentary on assisted suicide and the 2015 election. Around 15% of the population of Canada, being maybe 5 million people, have a physical or mental condition that substantially limits major life activities due in large part to barriers in the environment. The number of people who are directly affected by disability, family, friends, and service providers is much larger. 100% of those who ask for and receive assisted suicide have a disability, whether or not they also have a terminal or degenerative illness. On the other hand, less than 1,000 Muslims in Canada wear the niqab or the burqa, and those are two coverings that cover all or most of the face. So why has the hijab, which is the Muslim style of dress, become an election issue while none of the political parties has taken a clear position on the issue of palliative care in home services or assisted suicide?
There was a few debates, and in each debate there was at least one question about it, and all candidates just push it away. Okay, nobody will do a debate about it.
Right, and the federal candidates are going to have to, whoever becomes prime minister is going to have to lead a process of creating a law within the few weeks right after he becomes prime minister to create an assisted suicide program. And if they don't know anything about it, that's pretty scary.
Yes.
Okay. So disability is the only minority group that any person can join at any time. Disabled people face high rates of unemployment, institutionalization, and violence because of discriminatory social practices and prejudice. Social policies and prejudice, I should say. The most common reason people ask for assisted suicide: loss of autonomy, inability to do activities they enjoyed, perceived loss of dignity and feeling like a burden, relate not to dying, but to how people with disabilities are treated and live in our society. According to the Canadian Hospice and Palliative Care Association, only 16 to 30% of Canadians have access to hospice and palliative care. The solution chosen by the government, assisted suicide, is to kill people because society won't provide the services necessary so that people can live well and in comfort until they die at home. Maybe we should re-examine our priorities during this election campaign.
Yeah, for examining our position should be going to vote.
Vote.
Go
Yes.
to vote. If you don't vote, you lose all the power. A group of people who doesn't go to vote have no power in democracy.
Right. And even, you know, it might not seem that an individual vote would make a difference, but it does. And you can vote by anticipation, and you can vote directly on the day. Each of the parties will be happy to take you to the election place. And it's
Yes.
the way that you make yourself heard in a democratic society. It might not seem important, but it's very important.
In federal poll, you could vote since the first day of the declaration of the poll. Any day will be acceptable to vote.
Right. So get out and vote on or before the 19th, and good luck. Now, for our contact information. If you want to view our videos, and we have 2 years worth of webcasts to view, you can do a search for euthanasia and disability on the search engine of your choice, either through Google Hangouts on Air or YouTube. If you want to participate live, you can send me your email address, and I will send you a link to join us live about 15 minutes before the broadcast starts. For more information on the subjects we discuss, you can visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet. You can visit our website at tvndy.ca. Send me an email at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow me on Twitter @TVNDY. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks to Christian for helping out.
Thank you, Amy.
Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
See you next week. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.